welcome to the Law of Positivism podcast. I'm your host, Chiron, and I'm the creator of Law of Positivism. I'm here to help you on your spiritual and healing journey. I am a certified yoga and meditation teacher, a student of Chinese medicine, a doula, a Reiki practitioner, and a passionate, highly sensitive person. I want to use my knowledge to channel information and messages for you to grow on all levels. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode. I'm so grateful that you're here, and thank you so much to everyone who has left reviews on iTunes and shared the episodes on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you so much. I always do a personal oracle card reading for those who leave reviews and share the podcast with their friends and family. And I'm also grateful for all of you who are subscribing on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify. It really helps the podcast to grow and to be shared to many more people. So thank you so much. And this week I have an amazing astrologer and yoga teacher with me as my guest, Anders Asker. And he has been practicing yoga since 91, and he's a 800-hour certified yoga teacher in Hatha, Ashtanga and Rocket yoga. And he facilitates Ashtanga yoga and Rocket Vinyasa yoga teacher trainings here in Stockholm. So this week's episode will be all about that, and also a lot about astrology. So he has been a professional astrologer since 97, and he has a huge passion for astrology, and he's so wise and so amazingly well read about astrology. He knows so much about it, and besides his astrology and yoga, he also is a singer-songwriter. So it's amazing to be in his classes, and in the end he shares a little piece of his music in Savasana. So in this week's episode, we actually go deep into astrology and how you interpret your birth chart. And we talk about the important aspects such as the sun, moon, ascendant, your north node and south node, midheaven, Chiron. So it's all about you, your personality, your soul, your dharma and karma, your career, your healing. And we also talk about the current astrology and some astrology news, what's going on right now. We talk about his journey into yoga and astrology and his music as well. So Anders does astrological consultations where he dives deep into your birth chart. So if you're interested in that, you can check his links out in the show notes. And I really hope that you enjoy this episode, and if you do, please subscribe and share, and you can visit me on Instagram or Facebook at Law of Positivism. So just enjoy.
All right.
Yes, welcome to the podcast.
Jesus, that was quite an ordeal.
It's the technology, you know.
It is.
So great to have you here. I'm so excited about this conversation.
Right.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Shireen. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And I always start the podcast with asking the question, how do you stay mindful and present?
Oh, that's a good question. How do I stay mindful and in the present?
Yeah.
Well, I try to slow down and be here now, and it's quite a challenge. You know, I practice yoga. I practice a lot of yoga, breath work, asana, meditation, and that is all geared towards that, to be here now and to be totally present and mindful. But then again, our mind is always searching for new stuff. So it is, even though I work with it, I also tend to look ahead and look back and lose my perspective. But I do I remind myself of this every day. So I don't know what to answer you there. And it's like something that I train myself in every day, to be mindful, to be present, and yet I fall back into old patterns, like everybody, and look too far ahead or dwell in the past.
Yes, and that's why we have the practice. Otherwise, we wouldn't need it, maybe, if we would be at that state all the time. So that's why yoga and meditation is so important. I totally agree. And I think you and I met a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, for the first time. I came to your class, and that's the first time we crossed paths. And then I've followed you throughout these years, and I just love how you teach and everything that you do. Maybe we can start by sharing with the listeners. You can start by maybe sharing your background and what you do in life.
Yeah, well, I'm born in 1963, so I've come to quite a significant age now, and I've been taking a lot of different routes in my life, but music has always been with me. I discovered astrology when I was 18, 19, and I took to yoga. I took to it first when I was around 28, even though I had actually had books about it and stuff. But I started to practice Kundalini yoga back in 91 when Thomas Frankel opened the Deva Center on Dalagatan. So that was when I started to practice yoga. These three subjects have come to be my greatest passions, beside the passion of being with people I love, and the love for my family and so forth. So where shall I begin? I didn't know what to do in life early in age, or when I was in my 20s. I have a identical twin. He emigrated to California. We were both there 1 year at a time. When we were he was 16 and he was 17, I was 18. We were there. So there was quite a pull to America, because when I grew up, the United States was like, that's the place. I listened to so much music from USA, and we were really quite affected or influenced by the American dream. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And today, this is so. Thomas, my brother, he emigrated in 1983, and today, in 2020, the world has changed. It's quite different, and as I studied astrology, the cycles of astrology, and I also studied the Mayan calendar, and I was very much into that at the end phase, around 2010 to 12, the last years of the Mayan calendar. And somewhere around there, or even earlier, was when America, as the leading empire of the world, it came to a peak and it started to decline. So today, the world looks very different, and we can't get that much inspiration from there anymore. It looks like we have a lot of inspiration from many places on the earth, but actually here in Sweden, it's like we're at the middle between the East and the West. And we do have some quite wise ideas about how to steer our society. Now that we're having this interview, we're right in the hype of the coronavirus, and that's striking the earth with such a fear, and I guess the whole world is in a state of fear, and it's not easy to look objectively at things. But having said that, I also want to state that the corona fear is based in our fear of death, and you and I, if we study yoga, if we study astrology, if we study the deeper meaning of life, we know that we are eternal beings, and that we're doing the human experience, and that this is maybe not our last lifetime on the earth as a human. And then we get to understand the concept of death as just another transformative state where you move into another part of your journey as your soul, or as your as you move on. Yeah. Boy, did I have a hard time to keep on track with that answer. But let me just go back then and say that I did search for meaning. I lost my father when I was 25, and that helped me to start to search. I started to look for spiritual answers. The church had never given me, or Christianity had never given me those answers. So I was looking into the New Age, or into to all kinds of spiritual teachings that you could find in New Age shops like Vattuman and Drottninggatan, or East and West was existent back then on Östermalm. But anyway, so I started to search, and I was still looking. I didn't know really where to go, and I wanted to do music. So I started to work with different jobs just to make myself able to pursue music. And that went on for quite some time, and I didn't succeed with my music endeavors, with my career as a musician or a singer-songwriter. And all that time, it took me into, I reschooled. I had many odd jobs, but I reschooled and went into psychiatry as a mental, what you call it, a mental ward, mental skötare, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And I worked in that field for many years, over 13 years. And I started in daytime, but it's very easy to burn out in that sector because we don't have a functioning psychiatry, or it's very much pills and preservation, or locking in and giving medication. That's how it works. Not much dynamic therapy there, at least not when I started to work in 95. But I kept on with that. I kept on with the music and astrology, and I started to work more and more on the side with astrology, and suddenly yoga came into my life again in another shape. At that time I was married, and I had 2 small children, and we had the digital TV net coming on, and I had done Kundalini yoga for all those years, from 91 all the way through the 90s and into the 2000s, but it was getting more sporadic. And if you have kids, if you have a small family, that takes a lot of energy. But through the digital TV net, Vinyasa yoga, or Ishta yoga, if you know Ishta, the school by Alan Finger, or Mani Finger, his father, that was coming through Dutch TV station, and I started to do Vinyasa 16, 17, 18 minutes were those episodes or those classes, and I did them maybe twice a day. Started to do them regularly every day, and I started to again understand how the practice of yoga, even if you're looking for mindfulness, it has a lot of effects on your body. Like you start to walk with a taller spine, lifting the heart, and walk taller in life. And that really got to me. It's like, wow, this has an effect. And I started to search more in the Vinyasa tradition that led me to power yoga and then to Ashtanga yoga. And in 2006, I met a great teacher from the United States, from California, named Larry Schultz. And he had a school called It's Yoga, and he had an affiliate studio on Södermalm in Stockholm, where my ex-wife was doing a teacher training, 200-hour Ashtanga teacher training at that year. So, and she was, by coincidence, I got into a master class with Larry Schultz in the late summer of 2006. And that was such an aha moment for me, because that class, that intensity and the playfulness also of his teaching, but to do, because he was teaching Rocket Vinyasa is progressive Ashtanga, progressive way of doing Ashtanga, and it was mind-blowing for me. And also lying in Savasana, I was getting all these visions, and lying in the resting corpse pose after, I was getting all these visions. So that changed my direction. So I was still working in psychiatry, but 3 years later, I started to work full-time with yoga, and we took over that affiliate studio in Stockholm. And I was managing that studio with my ex-wife for 5 years until we divorced in 2013. Yeah. Do you want me to go on?
That's amazing. No, but that's amazing. That's a long history and really a beautiful path into what you're doing today. Like, you found your path, and if I'm correct, when you were 28, you're about to have your Saturn return, right?
Right.
So yeah,
at 28, the cycles around 27 to 29 and a half. What's your year? When are you born?
I'm born 88, so I had
So
mine.
you passed that, but the years 27 to around 30, then they're very important years, because you have numerological, you have the end of the youth square, and you enter the power square in a divine triangle at 27, and a little bit later in that year you have the progressive lunar return. So secondary progression, the lunar return comes back. So that's very important time when you align again with your moon, with your feelings, with your soul purpose. And then at around 29 and a half, Saturn, that has a 29 and a half year orbit around the sun, returns to its starting point when you were born. And that's the karmic, like a lift off of karma that you have been going through all that your life up until then. So you kind of set a new table, and you start out in your more grown-up life. So of course that's a very important time. That window of time between 27 and 29 and a half, something like that. That's a water lock, or a time lock, where you really tune into your serious direction in life.
Yeah, and I think that's true for many people, and a lot of shifts around that time, and then the second return. And I would love for us to get into astrology, because I've been into astrology for, I would also say, like over 10 years now that I've been studying it and just going deeper and deeper into it. And I love how it's like always unfolding. Everything that is unfolding around us is in line with it. So I think a lot of the listeners have also followed me on Love Positivism Instagram for many years now and have seen my astrology post. But maybe we can just tap into like maybe first the basics of now we mentioned Saturn and the moon and all of that. Maybe just like we can start with the three important things that we can base our own reading upon, like the sun and the moon and the ascendant, like what they represent. Because sometimes I write about these things, but maybe it's hard to apply to your own chart. Yeah. How would you describe those three as?
Well, yeah, those are the three main points in the chart. And if you begin, everybody knows their sun sign. Everybody knows when their dates, what sign that is in. So the sun sign is your spiritual purpose in life, and it's like it's very much connected to the heart and the spirit, and it's also a very positive energy that gives you drive and purpose and courage. It's kind of a masculine symbol, the way we interpret astrology today. So where you find your sun, that's where you've chosen to incarnate and work purposefully towards mastering the symbolism of that sign. So if you're not, right now we're in Pisces, right? So the sun in Pisces is that's a sign that is most connected with synthesis and trying to connect all the threads, because it's the last of the signs in the zodiac. So it's water, it's movable, and it's feminine. So maybe that was a bad example to take up, because the water signs. What sign are you, Shireen?
I'm a Cancer sun sign, so I am a water sign.
So the water signs are maybe the most tricky signs, because they, in themselves, water represent feelings, water represents under the surface, and so the connection with subconsciousness and with stuff that is below the surface. Most people can hide their feelings, but if you're born Cancerian or Scorpio or Pisces, those feelings are, it's like you can't hide them. You can't hide them too much, because it's so much part of your nature, and you use them to tune in to life. So you're very much like a radio that can tune in to wavelengths and atmospheres and what's going on the feeling level.
Yeah, that's very true. And it also, like, it's like we don't, it's kind of like being in the feelings and emotions, and then also tuning into others very easily. And so it's like almost like floating all the time.
Yeah.
and then like you have to like balance yourself to
Yes.
like integrate all the other parts of yourself.
Right. So the balance for Cancer is in the opposite sign of Capricorn, which is Earth, which is also a feminine sign, but it's Earth and that will ground your feelings.
True.
But if you talk about the moon, the moon is in itself a symbol of the feelings, because it connects with the water sign Cancer. I didn't say that, but the sun connects with the sun sign Leo. But the sun has also a strong habitat in Aries, where it's exalted, and the moon in Taurus, where it is in its exaltation. But I shan't go into those. That's highbrow details. But I just wanted to say,
I have the moon in Taurus as well.
So then you have a very well placed moon, because if you know about the feelings fluctuate. They go up and they go down. And most people in the world, they ride the roller coaster of their feelings, and they live in their dramas, you know. If it's positive or if it's negative, that's what feeds them. That's how feelings feed them. But the position of the moon in Taurus, which is the most steady of all the earth signs, it's the fixed earth, right? That enables the feeling to find security in that earth sign. So that's one of the reasons why we consider the moon, it's in its exaltation when it's in the sign of Taurus. And what did I want to say more about the moon? The moon is more connected to, it's connected to the personality and to the feelings and to our soul. So the moon is more connected to the soul and to the night, to the depths of your personality. And where you find the moon in the chart is where you find your needs. And we have to satisfy our needs in order to feel good. And so if you have the moon in Taurus, now I'm talking about your horoscope, but if you have the moon in Taurus, you have a great need for physical contact, for touch. And also you have a need to express the Vishuddha chakra, the fifth chakra is very important because it's connected to Taurus, right? It's connected to the throat and to Venus and to the expression of beauty. And then Taurus is also security based and has to do with values, with money, what we own, what we need to have to feel secure, to feel safe. So you can really spin on all these symbols that connect to a sign where you have the sign where you have your moon, and understand your needs, your feeling nature, and also what you feed others with. And then if you talk about the ascendant, the rising sign, very interesting point in the chart, because this is the fastest moving point in the chart. So it's very sensitive. And the rising sign is the cusp of the first house in the charts. And the first house is you. So the ascendant is another expression of you, your personality. When you rest, when you just are, the ascendant describes that personality. So where is your ascendant?
I have my ascendant in Leo.
So there comes the fire in. So if you have sun in Cancer and moon in Taurus, and then the rising sign in Leo, that's quite another voice. But is it in square with the moon? Is it squaring the moon?
I don't know, actually.
What's the degree of your ascendant? What's the degree of your moon?
I think the moon is like 16 degrees and the ascendant is like 29 degrees.
So then they are not actually in a tight square. It's a very wide square. But I was, that's also above the level that we can talk, but I was just bringing in that you look at the planets and the points like the ascendant, and you see if they are in an aspect. When you divide the circles in basic numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you use those to divide the circle and see aspects. And I was mentioning a square. A square is a 90-degree aspect when you divide the circle in 4, and that's a very driving force. So if you have the moon in Taurus, that sign squares Leo. They're both fixed signs. And then the moon will drive the ascendant, or the ascendant will feel the driving force of the moon to get some kind of compromise between the drive of Leo and the drive of Taurus. Do you understand what I say?
Yeah, and I think that's very true, because now that I look, I have my moon in 22 degrees and ascendant in 27. So
they are square.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So then you have always, that's one of your ground, of your basic things in the chart, is that you want to manifest that Leonian traits, which is Leo is a natural leader. Leo is content. And when we talk about yoga, we talk about santosha, contentment, right? And actually, Leo, when it is in its natural state, it's very content. It's like warm and giving and generous, and it just is. It's a natural queen or a natural king. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it is.
So that energy combined with Taurus, which is Taurus is like trying to it's into values. It's into touch, feeling, and it wants to how do you say that? To really enjoy and to really satiate the desires of life. It wants to graze in the fields and nurture itself with all kinds of stuff that brings in the appreciation of the earth, of life.
Yeah, and Taurus is so because I have my midheaven in Taurus as well, right next to my moon.
Yeah.
So it feels like that energy has also been very strong in also like what I want to do and all of that. So I think it's really interesting because when you talk to someone about astrology, I think most people think about like the regular horoscope and the they don't even identify with their sun sign, but there's so much that influences us, and most of us have so many planets like all over the different signs.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's interesting to see like how maybe we can talk about the midheaven, like what it means.
Yeah, because that's the fourth point. If you've mentioned sun, moon, ascendant, and the ascendant describes the personality in a resting state, just being. Then the midheaven, medium quali, MC, that describes your actual drive, your ambition, what you want to project out into the world, what you want people to perceive you as. So if that's in combination with the moon, then you have like a very strong drive to manifest feminine energies in your career, to manifest, the love of nature or the love of food, or I don't know, whatever that satiates your being or satisfies your hunger. That's something that you can also work with professionally. So the
Yes.
MC describes your professional drive. It actually, or it describes your career or your social status. And then look to the sign and see what it means, and then you can sort of understand where you're going with that drive, with your ambition. I also want to add in that right now, as we speak, 2020 is a very special year, because we're having a stellium of planets, outer planets in Capricorn, the goat, the mountain goat with a fish tail. And that has not happened for a very long time. The constellations we have in the skies, the year began with a Pluto-Saturn conjunction. The Pluto, the dwarf planet far out in the galaxy, was lying on the same degree as Saturn, the seventh planet, or the last one that we can see with our bare eye in the sky, in the night sky. So they were conjoining in Capricorn, and they haven't done that for 500 years. Last time they did it was back in 1518, 19, when Luther was, nailing his thesis on the church, and the Reformation started, and also Hernando Cortez invaded Mesoamerica. The Aztec Empire under he came there with 600 soldiers, and of course he had infiltrators and others that helped him, and the empire was corrupt in itself because it was ruled by the sword, and the Aztecs were cruel. But anyway, in 18 months, with 600 soldiers, he conquered that empire of 35 million Indians. It's a crazy story. It's a wild story. But anyway, that happened 500 years ago, and the consequences of that has been profound. What the invasion of, or the conquering of Mesoamerica or South America, and the split of the church. Today, we have that conjunction again. It was also prevalent in 2019, but it became exact in the beginning of 2020. But in 2020, Jupiter is also in Capricorn. Jupiter spends 1 year in each sign. So it is in Capricorn too. And right now, Mars, the red planet that has the 2-year orbit around the sun, is in Capricorn. So there's been so much energy in Capricorn, and there is this conjunction, or the stellium with Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn, is in effect throughout the year. And this is very rare occasion, that these three planets lie so close to one another for the duration of 11 months. That's very rare, and it won't happen again for 1,000 years. And I have I love this astrologer in another one in California called Matthew Stelzner, and he's calling it the Dragon Rider portal. That the whole year is so much flavored by this Dragon Rider portal. And to ride a dragon, that's quite a rocky ride. So you have to buckle up and prepare for some what you call it, shakes. What you call it when you fly an aeroplane and it becomes unsteady.
Oh yeah, turbulence.
Yeah, it's going to be a turbulent ride.
Yeah,
because Capricorn, the sign Capricorn, has to do with ambition. So it's relevant to what we were talking about. MC, the 10th house, has similar meanings as the sign Capricorn. The mountain goat that wants to climb up, climb and climb and climb to reach the summit, to reach the top, where it can look out and see how the valley lies. When it sees how the valley lies, it feels secure, because then it knows how to play the game. Then it knows the rules. When it knows the rules, it will act accordingly and start to take one step at a time to reach the top of its career, to reach, to follow that ambitious drive. And you can say so much about the sign Capricorn. It's connected with isolation, because Saturn is the natural ruler of the sign. So it's connected with isolation, with loneliness, with absent parent, absent father. To have a lot of ordeals or challenges, to take a lot of responsibility or early on in life. That's typical Capricornian traits. But ultimately, it becomes a very responsible and wise and truthful being that can rule, with the goals, with meaning, you see, the sign Capricorn is adjacent to the sign Aquarius, and both these signs are ruled by Saturn. And in 2020, Saturn will actually move into Aquarius for 3 months and then back down again. It will come into Aquarius just in 10 days from now or something. It enters Aquarius, and it will be there on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd degree, and then it will retrograde in the end of April or beginning of May, and it will back into Capricorn again in the beginning of July. So we get a little touch of that Aquarian energy too, that Saturn is so much connected to. I don't know if I'm losing track, but to know the difference between those signs, the leadership that we have in Capricorn is often much more tight and stern and like follow the rules, and is like very ambitious. Corporations and governments, they all fall under Capricorn. But in Aquarius, there is the more unselfish leadership. The Aquarius is the opposite sign of Leo. If Leo is the emperor, or the queen and the king, in Aquarius you have the more modern leader that wants to rule with the people. And if you look back in time, the greatest time of revolutions was in the 1700s, in the late 1700s, when the planet Uranus was discovered. We had the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the freedom time in Sweden. So that time was like, it gave us inspiration to start to individualize and find our own significant path. But then it was shut down, or strong powers always want the people to follow the lead. So all those impulses were, of course, quieted or suppressed by the powers that are, and that's been going on ever since. But right now, in 2020, with these energies in Capricorn, there's a tremendous cleansing going on in all the top pyramids, or the top what you call it, structures in the little man, structures in the big man, structures in society are being cleansed by this progression of planets going there. And Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008 and it exits in 2024. But Saturn spends 2.5 years in his own sign, so he's going out this year, or by the end of the year he comes to the next sign. He entered in 2017, late 2017. but what I wanted to say is that cleansing and that transformation, we feel it, right? And now we have this coronavirus going on. How is that going to affect the structures and the policies and the leadership in our world?
Yeah, I mean, astrologers have been saying for a long time that 2020 would be a very special year. So we can see that right now, and everything is happening for us to evolve. And yeah, as you said, like in the beginning, if we fear something, we have fears around death, for example. We also have fears around life. So right now it's like a shift within and around us. And just talking about Capricorn also, because the next points that I think are really interesting in the astrology is the North and South node, which are Dharma and Karma, and which has been in the North node has been in Cancer, and the South node in Capricorn. Maybe we can also talk about what these points mean in our chart.
Yeah, the very interesting subject. So in Vedic astrology, they call it the or also in Western astrology, we call it the dragon's head and the dragon's tail.
Yeah.
And the North node that you're correctly speaking is in Cancer and has been in Cancer for about 15 months, I think. And the southern node is in Capricorn. And so the southern node in your birth chart represents the lives that you are leaving. The incarnations, the most recent incarnations are very much connected with where the south node is. And that's a point in the chart where you actually have power and you have talent. You have a lot of yes, you have talent, but that's a part of the chart that you're leaving in your spiritual journey, because you're moving towards the other pole, the polar opposite, which is the dragon's head, the North node. And isn't it interesting that we have all this turbulence right now in governments and in the social sphere, when the South node is going through Capricorn, because Capricorn is also has been associated with cruelty, and just selfish strive to reach the top, to walk over dead bodies, or I don't know how you express it, but that ambitious drive. And we're trying to release that, to let go of that, and instead aim towards the emotional nurturance and the care for our kin, for our close ones, for the people close to us, that Cancer represents, the home, the family. And how can we balance home and career, Cancer and Capricorn, on a spiritual level in our lives? So the South node is something that we have to let go of in the chart in order to grow, expand, and follow the spiritual direction that aims towards the North node. And right now they are in the North node is in Cancer. This is a very interesting journey that we do, and it's also interesting to know where these nodes are house-wise, because you don't only have 12 signs, you have 12 houses that begin with the ascendant, with the rising sign, and then you have 4 quadrants of 3 houses, and where are those nodes? If you for instance take your own chart where's the south and the north node in your own chart?
So I have my north node in Pisces, and it's in 16 degrees of Pisces, and it looks like it's in the 7th house.
Right. So then Pisces, the north node in Pisces, means that you have if you have the south node, then it's in opposite sign in Virgo.
Yeah,
in
Virgo.
16 degrees. And Virgo is a very it's an earth sign. It's a mutable earth sign, and it's ruled by Mercury, and it's exalted by Mercury, or Mercury's in its exaltation there. So it's a very powerful mind in Virgo, a very analytical mind that wants precision or wants to find perfection, and can have a very critical streak. In Pisces, we're trying to go with the flow. We're trying to dissolve everything into oneness. So Pisces, we were starting to talk about Pisces, how that sign is so complex, because we're actually trying to understand the limitlessness of life, and to just be absorbed in the oneness, in unconditional love. So you're doing a spiritual journey from having been, maybe you've been into health before, you've been working with health, but you've been working with very much with a discerning mind, and you've had a very controlling mind. And now you're moving towards the great oceans of Pisces, where you're just supposed to let go and flow with the rivers, flow with the feelings, go with walk with via con Dios, you know. That's Pisces. And that's one of the great challenges in your life, is to let go of the controlling mind and just follow the heart, let go and follow with that flow. And
that's really true.
So it's very interesting. And then you say you come from the first house. Is the south node in the first house?
So because my ascendant is it's in 27 degrees of Leo, so my Virgo is in the first house, so it looks like it
is there, and that and if you take the meaning of that, you're leaving incarnationally, you're leaving a number of lives where you've been very independent, where you have been relying on your own resources. And in this life, you're moving towards cooperation, sharing, and to live in twosomeness. So then you put that into the picture, that you're also moving towards that, to be able to live in a marriage, to live in a relationship, and get that to work, despite your memories of being so independent and self-reliant and strong, you know, on your own. Do you understand what I say?
Yeah, definitely. And I can definitely see how our south node comes in very easily for us. Like it comes easily, but then it also can affect us, because I can definitely relate to, you know, like the Virgoian like mind, you know, the whole Mercury part, because I also have my Gemini in Mercury and Venus in Mercury, so or in Gemini, I mean. So it really shows up in my life, also when it comes to like order and, you know, neatness and cleanliness. But at the same time, like I always say that, like I flow in and out of states in my life where I'm like in that Piscean world. So it maybe half of the time I'm like on a different planet. So more than half the time I feel like I'm not really a physical human. So I'm like floating out and feeling that Piscean oneness, and without really doing anything. It's not like I'm trying to achieve that or meditate myself into it, but I just flow into that, like, you know, in Swedish, like flummig, like being up there. But I've lived my life very, like, you know, actually more like in the Capricorn Virgo manner, like, you know, with studies and work and all of that. But it's like that part has been with me as long as I've remembered, since I was a child. So the Pisces is really strong for me, and I think where I'm going with my life, it's definitely towards my Dharma and that space of Pisces. So it's really beautiful. And I also wanted to tap into, because one thing that I'm really interested in is healing. So I'm really interested in Chiron also in the chart. Maybe we can talk about that.
You have Chiron in Gemini, right?
Now I have Chiron in actually in Cancer, in the beginning, the 1 degree in Cancer.
Right. And Chiron, the wounded healer, which was discovered in 1977, and very fast was taken into the astrological readings, and many books are written on the subject. Chiron is it's a very psychic energy or emotional energy, and it's non-verbal, it's non-intellectual, and it's shamanistic, right? So it's when it was discovered in 1977, there was an upheaval there was a great expansion of alternative medicine, and also the gay movement had a great expansion back then, because Chiron is a centaur. It's a half horse, half man, and all the demi entities, they symbolize the integration of masculine and feminine. So Chiron, when it came, it has very much to do with the new integration of masculine and feminine, and you can see that in the culture around the time 1977 when it was discovered, that we were trying to become more integrated, not so polarized in our sexes, right?
Yeah.
But then the woundedness of Chiron, because if you read up on the story of Chiron, he had a very tough life. He was, discarded, or he was. His mother wouldn't want of him at all, because he was like a freak to her. He was the progeny of Saturn and Philyra. Philyra was a nymph, a wood nymph or forest nymph, and Saturn was, of course, Saturn. but when he was making love or whatever he was doing with Philyra, his wife was approaching, so he shapeshifted into a stallion and rode off, or galloped off, and that's one of the stories around the birth. When then Philyra gave birth to Chiron, she wouldn't want of him because he was a half horse, half man, a freak. So he was fostered by. I know that Apollon was his foster father, and Apollon taught him music, astrology, warcraft, and healing. So, and he had many more subjects that he was taught, but he in himself became a great teacher, and also helped to take on, or he was like a foster father for Jason, for instance, and all the great heroes in the Greek myth or in the Roman myth, they came to him where he was working in his cave at Mount Pelion, and they got initiated. partly through astrology, he initiated them into their life path, into their calling. But he was also lecturing them or teaching them. Especially, he was very, very proficient in healing and in war, like martial arts or whatever it was. He was teaching that. But for all his healing ability, when that incident came, when there was a tumultuous fight between drunken centaurs and him and a bunch of his, or Hercules and some of the ones that were with him, he was injured by a poisoned arrow that was there was a mistakenly shot by Hercules that hit his, I think it was his left calf, but I can't remember exactly if it was the left calf. But he was wounded by the poison of the Hydra, and he, for all his healing power, he couldn't heal it. And with the agony, he went to Zeus, to Jupiter, and asked him if he could swap places with Prometheus. Prometheus was the one that stole the fire from the gods and gave it to the people. And for that, he was punished, and he was chained to a rock. And every day, vultures came and ate his intestines, his liver, picked his liver, and then the next day it started again. So that's one of those crazy punishment stories. But he asked Zeus, Jupiter, Chiron asked, since he was a half god, he couldn't die, right? So he asked Zeus if he could swap places with Prometheus, die and set Prometheus free. And Jupiter was so moved by his request that he took him and he threw him up on the sky into the sun sign Sagittarius, into the constellation, into the star constellation of Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, that star constellation, is also Chiron, right? That is Chiron. But then we discovered the planetoid in 77, and now we also have a body in the horoscope that moves. So where you have Chiron, if you have Chiron in Cancer, there is a wound in the family. There's a wound when it comes to emotions, and you have chosen to heal that wound in your family in this lifetime, and you do it through yourself, through your own practice. So you have to heal yourself first, and then you can teach the other members or siblings or parents or cousins or whatever it is, with that wisdom. So Chiron is a wise teacher.
Yeah, I love that. Great to have the background as well of Chiron as the wounded healer. And it's really,
there are other stories. There's, this was some 3,500 years ago, and it was in the end of a matriarchal culture that, the matriarchy was going out and the patriarchy was coming in, and it was a time when there was a very brutal way of having sex. So it was a time when men was kind of, abusing or just, very brutally having sex with women. And they say that Chiron came down to teach the men and the women the art of sex, of love, the art of it, and how both parts can really find this the spiritual, the oneness, the merging into one. That actually has symbolism in the sign of Scorpio. But anyway, that Chiron had such a mission to teach the art of love and to start to evaluate that and for the men to understand the feminine. The feminine, in my view, the feminine is actually the strongest of the sexes, because she is the mother of the child, but she's also the initiator into sexuality. She knows it more because she's closer to the moon, to the feeling, to the movement of feeling, and she can guide the man into a sacred sex. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
And
definitely.
Chiron had such a mission. And today we're starting to learn collectively to really honor love between mutual love between humans, or between human beings, and with respect we get the freedom to choose our partners, and to have this sacred sex, the union that brings us into a contact with our divinity, you know, with the divine. Right?
Yes, and the Great Mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's beautiful. And you actually work with astrology and readings. Maybe you can share like how people can contact you for a reading. Do you do it online or?
Yeah, I can do it online, but I prefer. It's always good to have a personal meeting, and people can find me if they. I have a website called Anders bindestreck, or say Anders dash Asker.se. That's my webpage. For now, I have that webpage, and then that's a domain, so you can email me there on info or astrology or yoga at that Anders-Asker.se. So you can find me there. You can find me on I am on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram.
I will share all the links in the show notes, definitely, so they can also find you, because then you will like read the whole chart and take out the most important points, I guess, when you do the reading.
Yeah, when I do a reading, it's like a 90-minute session. It takes around 90 minutes, and I have to prepare myself before that, so I do the same amount of time preparation, and then we record the reading, and it's like an initiation. It's a very deep initiation into yourself, and an affirmation of where you are in life. I often use the natal horoscope, and then I use 3 or 4 progress charts, like secondary progression, tertiary progression, minor progression, solar arc direction. I can look at the solar return, the birthday chart, the prognosis of the year, and of course transits that are in the year are very interesting. Astrology is a very wide, it's a spiritual science, you know, and it's very wide, and you can see so much in it, but you also have to try to detach from too much intellectual approach to get into the feelings, and to, you know, to understand how Venus or Mars or Moon or whatever planet we're talking about, how it is manifesting in you, and how you can use it for your benefit, because you have placed the planets where they are. It's not like a destiny that's written in the stars. It is. It can be called that as long as you're an unaware being, as long as you're just, you know, not being very individualized. But as soon as you become more and more aware, which I know that you're a highly aware being, Shireen. So then it's actually you who have placed every planet into the chart, and that's the map. That's the map for how you can ride the wave in this life, and how you can manifest your moon, Mars, Venus, Mercury, etc. So it's very interesting, and I start to relearn astrology, how I can teach people that you have laid the map there. It's your doing. You decided to incarnate at this place and time with this setting of family and so forth, to do your next earth lesson. And
So true.
yeah.
I always say that even how hard it is, we have chosen this for a reason, because otherwise it would be really tough to see why things happen, and it's how we can work with it, and hopefully we become more and aware and conscious about all of these things, so we can like ascend a little bit more as a collective and as individuals as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing how we evolve, and I really want to thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom, and it's so interesting, and I'm sure we will talk again about these subjects, maybe tap into more things. Do you think we've missed anything important from the astrology in this talk that you want to mention?
Well, I do want to mention that not right now we're in Pisces, and in Pisces right now there are 3 planets. Sun is in the very end of the sign, because it's 2 more days until the equinox when it enters Aries. So the last 2 days of Sun in Pisces, and Neptune, the ruler of Pisces, the modern ruler of Pisces that was discovered in 1846, he's in the middle, or actually he's on the verge of coming into the last third, the last decade of the sign. But he stands there and he sends out, he has also a feminine energy, he sends out these waves of how we can communicate with all life, and how we can start to tune into another flow, like we were talking about your North Node in Pisces, how we try to tune into the oneness and our place in the unity. The earth is still in quarantine, in the sense that we have not written the peace contract on earth yet. So the earth is kind of quarantined from the rest of the universe, or from the rest of the life in the universe, because we're so deep into violence still. But we're getting there. We're opening up, and we're starting to communicate more and more with other intelligences in the universe, right? So that's Neptune is opening up that. And Mercury, who was retrograding in Pisces the past, about 4 weeks ago, he stationed retrograde and went backwards until we reached the full moon. He stationed again direct. He dipped back into Aquarius. He was at the end of the Aquarius, and he came back into Pisces. So he's going over a stretch where he's been backing the last month. And that's interesting, because with the full moon in Pisces and Mercury retrograde, we had the coronavirus spreading. And Pisces can be symbolized by a lack of immunity, because we open up so much. Immune system is connected to both Virgo and Pisces, but also fantasy and imagination. And with Mercury going retrograde there, and the full moon that was around a week ago or more, that the imagination ran wild, and it was fears that feeded that imagination, instead of positivism or belief in what we can create with our dreams. So that's a very interesting aspect. And Neptune will be in Pisces for another 5 years or so. 5-6 years before he leaves. So that's a great influence that we have. And I also want to mention Uranus in Taurus, how that is revolutionizing our and the money market, the banking, how our values, how we can make it easier to use our technicalities, our phones or computers and everything. Taurus is a great way of finding a way to make it easier to use these technologies that we have today.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a very good recap and overview of what's going on, and we will all stay tuned to that.
I would love also if you could share. I don't know if you do with. Can you put in music in this podcast or
yes, sure.
Use some of my songs on Spotify or on the musical platforms out there, because I have at least 16 songs in my name, Anders Asker, on Spotify. So find some song that you like there and use it.
Yes, for sure. We can play it after this talk, so we can have it in the podcast. And you also you are actually planning some teacher trainings this year as well in Rocket and Ashtanga here in Sweden. Yeah.
First of all, we're doing an immersion, a Rocket retreat in May, 1st to 3rd of May, at a place called Skeppsudden in Bråviken, close to close to Kolmården, opposite Kolmården.
Yeah.
So we're doing a 2.5-day retreat there, 1st to 3rd of May, and then we do our annular 200-hour Ashtanga Vinyasa Yoga teacher training, beginning on the 7th of June, and that's a 3-module. It's in 3 modules of 8 days with a 6-day break in between them. So it lasts until I think it's the 12th of July, from 7th of June to the 12th of July. And that teacher training, it's the 5th year that I do it with Magdalena Putipa and Rebecca Walter, and some external teachers too. But we are the troika that steers the ship. And it's been such a journey with those co-teachers of mine, and I've really developed the teacher trainings. I started to do teacher trainings in 2009, but today it's such on another level. So we have that, and then we also have 100-hour teacher training in 2 modules in the end of July and the beginning of August in the Rocket Vinyasa, and that's the next level after the 200-hour. But that's the 2nd year that we do that now, and it's great. It's also such a joy to share those teachings that I learned partly by meeting Larry Schultz back in 2006 and being a part of It's Yoga International for the past 10 years. We are now actually taking a step further because we have just launched our company, Spiritual Solutions, and our branch called Attuned Yoga. So that's new for this year, that we're actually launching our school, Attuned Yoga.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's lovely. Yeah. So much exciting stuff. I can't wait. And we do teach also at the same studio, me and you, so we will bump into each other soon again. Yes. Lovely. I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm really filled up with joy and love and positivity, and I can't wait to connect with you again. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Love you, Shireen. I love you.
Namaste. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode helped you to understand astrology a little bit better and deeper, and how you understand and interpret your own birth chart. And astrology is really a complicated system, but it takes years to learn. So if you really want to know more deeper about yourself and your birth chart, I really recommend you to reach out to Anders and get a personal consultation. And I really appreciate everyone who's shared and reviewed this podcast, so thank you so much. And we will close off by some music by Anders. Namaste.
Traveling the empty road, yellow sockets in my hand. A land, the man, the moon, the tale I cannot fake and give to all. It's not my call. Roses in the riverbed, floating by your misty eyes. I call the ball and hail the fail of many turns of dewy likes. She never bites. I do believe that you're the one, the only one, the only love, just like a star in endless skies. I do believe that we can fly, flying high above the skies. These eyes have watched you through the night. You live in other modes of light. Rises from the shadowland. So many dents along the road. I see the wheel that spun your tale of disbelief. It's quite alright. It's quite alright. Each time lingers on the words I choose. I have no thoughts but make them clear. I feel a breeze of comfort sung for someone else who hasn't gone. You haven't gone. I do believe that you're the one, the only one, the only love, just like a star in endless skies. I do believe that we are one, flying high above the clouds. Behold the bird who sets you free. There is no loss but love to all. Guardian angels take our hands. Forever yours, this newborn man. Guardian angels take our hands. Forever yours, this newborn man.